Welcome to the Arete Podcast, the podcast created to help senior executives and the organisations they lead live up to their full potential. Join us for cutting-edge interviews with leading senior executive and board members across all industry sectors, and for practical tips to accelerate your executive career. And now, here's your host, Richard Triggs.
Well, it's fantastic to welcome my wonderful friend Rex Urwin back to the Arete Podcast. We did do one many years ago, it feels like now, and great to reconnect in this format, although obviously you and I catch up very, very regularly as I attend your workshops and you do some coaching work with me and so on. But how are you, Rex?
I'm extremely well, and thank you for inviting me.
It is my pleasure. I think I asked you this morning, how are you? And you said, I'm so well it hurts.
Yeah. yeah. Like, it's really nice being me.
Right. Well, that's good.
Yeah. It wasn't always, but it's
right.
Nice now. I found a niceness in my 7th decade.
Oh, that's excellent. So does that mean that you wouldn't want to be anybody else?
Yeah.
Right. Not even for a day.
I would like some of the skills of others.
Right.
To experience and or understand things, but essentially really happy in my skin.
Right. It'd be interesting. I've been sort of, as you know, fascinated by this sort of AI and everything that's coming with that. It'd be quite cool if you could go, I wouldn't mind being George Clooney for a day, and you could just put on some, AI goggles, and all of a sudden you're George Clooney and just experience him for a day. And then you might say, I wouldn't mind experiencing being a woman having a baby, and, I wonder how far away all that is.
Yeah, be careful what you wish for, because I do the work which we're going to explore that I do and sort of get into the deeper nature of someone's experience being themselves. Below the surface is sometimes it's not as good a world as it looks.
Oh, no.
I mean, George looks great, but what's it like inside the experience of being George?
Well, that's how you'd find out, isn't it?
Yeah. But giving birth, like, dude, I'll leave that one to you.
Yeah.
But it's like, there's a relationship with that and bowling balls.
So they say. But, many women go back for more. So
yeah, true. Maybe they're built for it.
I heard this guy talking about, men saying, giving birth is like, being kicked in the nether regions. And he said, but a man would never intentionally, having been kicked in the nether regions, want to go through that again, whereas women will often, want to have another baby. So anyway, I absolutely take my hat off to mothers and women having witnessed the experience twice. It is not for the faint-hearted.
No, it's a hell of a... Don't you get a deep respect witnessing childbirth?
Oh, completely. I was listening to a podcast recently, and this guy was talking about how, with the rise of, feminism and women wanting to have careers and that are equivalent to men, which I absolutely support, there's been a real emphasis on this feminism movement around that. But this person on this podcast was talking about how really there's three feminism. There's 3 levels of feminism. If that's one level, the second level is mothers, and having this profound respect for, women being mothers. And then the third one is, what they used to call the crone, the old wise woman. And it seems that there's been a lack of emphasis on motherhood and wisdom as part of that whole, exploring the rise of feminism and so on. And I've discussed it with a few women and they definitely agree. So yeah, but coming back to childbirth, and absolutely, not only did it give me a profound respect for the women having children, but also, single mothers in the workforce. I used to work with single mothers and I'd go, yeah, I kind of get that it would be pretty tough to, do that. And then once I had a kid, it's like, holy crap, how do they do this? It's incredible.
All day, every day, 24-hour watch, and then go to work and try and make that work as well.
Yeah, it's very commendable and tremendous respect for people in that situation. But anyway, it's great to have you along. And Rex, so just to remind people who may not have listened to the previous podcast that we did, tell us a little bit about what you do and what you're up to at the moment.
Yeah, sure. Thank you. My work, I'll call my life's work, is as a mentor these days, and predominantly mentoring people, high performers and humans, but there is a particular focus on high performance because I've got this insane belief, and through the experience of my mentoring and coaching and being in the psychology realm over the last 30 or more years, is that there is a potential in humans and a unique potential in each human that once tapped into opens up a set of choices and a life, both externally and internally, that is deliciously evolving and enjoyable and fulfilling. And so because we are able to be distracted when we are lacking skill, we can end up distracted from that potential or the path to it and be running around looking for the experience of that potential in our life and missing it. So for me, when I sort of see that and seeing people come from impossible to possible or ordinary to extraordinary, that I recognize that humans, given the tools, can go from any position to any position if guided, if walked beside. So for me, I love it. And it's just evolved into a love affair and a joy and witnessing of extraordinary performance of humans, even when they pretend they're lost.
It's interesting that you use the word mentor rather than coach. That's obviously deliberate, right? So why have you chosen to position yourself in as mentor versus coach?
Yeah, I believe that coaches are more consciously scripted, working with structure, working with systems that is more micro in its skill level and developing efficiencies. Whereas mentoring, I think, is when a coach evolves to a more skillful, and I dare say this carefully, masterful level. I think anyone who devotes to a craft evolves to mastery if they stay with the craft. And in mastery, they go off. I'll use a musical metaphor because I know you love it. They go off the score, or can go off the score, into the infinite potential of it all. Whereas the coach is very much, not always, but very much on the score.
Right.
So for me, when you reach a level of statesmanship in your craft, you move to mentorship, or you become Miles Davis as a musician, where you can jam and improvise off the score, but come back to it, but you can go off it.
The improvisational, another way to perhaps think about that is we need structure, and structure would more be sort of seen as a left brain kind of activity.
Yes.
But once you have a firm structure in place, then you can flow.
Yes.
Because you've got that foundational structure there, and flow is more, perceived as being a right brain activity, or you could even say structure might be more masculine, flow is more feminine. But so what you're saying is that again, I mean, as you mentioned earlier, you've been doing this for a long, long time, and for those, Rex and I have known each other. Rex was my first boss, my first proper boss back when I was about 21. So gosh, that's 21, 36 years we've known each other. Wow. And you've certainly coached and mentored me, many times over the years, which I've found incredible. And what was the point that I was going to make there? I mean, you've been doing it for a long time. So it'd be fair to say you've done your 10,000 hours, probably 100,000 hours, building that foundational structure, which then gives you this sort of opportunity to in many ways make the work that you do a lot more playful, isn't it?
Yeah. If I came to you for recruitment guidance, I would be coming to a mentor, in my view of you. When you walk in a room with recruitment issues happening, your awareness and insight into what's actually happening is considerably more infinitely capable than a young recruitment person. So the mentoring is you understand leadership, you understand the fit, you also understand the technology of recruitment and the strategy or the structure of it and a company's need, but that's deeper. You see it more deeply. And I think, to me, that's the mentor versus the coach.
Okay. Yeah. Look, I understand that. And so what would be an example or a couple of examples of, people who've come to you? I imagine there are times where people are coming to you because they're in crisis. And there are other times where people are coming to you and they're just wanting to realize their greatest potential.
Yeah.
So give us perhaps a sort of an example or a couple of examples of each of those.
As a particular case?
Well, no, yeah, but obviously not without naming names,
Of course.
but so that we've got some context for the conversation.
Yeah. First example would be somebody who has achieved an extraordinary performance in their world, in their work, and of course been able to cross-pollinate that into their personal life. When they turn up, it's dealing with, I want to evolve myself to the next level, or I'm in my way. So they're in a place where they know they're in their way. They're humble enough to recognize and own it, so they can look in the mirror and just say, for me to go to the next level, I need to understand that I've got to change some stuff. I know that I'm sort of stuck in a way, and it might be I'm stuck in a belief, or I'm stuck in a doubt or a hesitation, or I'm sort of hesitating, or I'm lacking confidence. I'm able to recognize it, and I need you to help me through that to get to my outcome. So they know their outcome, or they'll come and go, I've sort of achieved to here. And it's like I'm in the comfort zone. Everything's working. It's great. I've got my machines, houses, life. I've got all of that, but I'm sort of numb. I'm sort of uninspired.
Mm.
So I've done a lot of having, and then we will look and go, well, who through the next level do you want to become, and what's happening in that next level? So for those guys, they're aware of involvement, and they're aware of where they need guidance or someone to walk with, talk with, listen with, interrupt thinking to get out of their way to be able to cause the next level. So they're very much in responsibility, but they know that they need a guide. The second group might, as you alluded to, would be people who, as you say, are in a crisis. Something's wrong. They're getting a set of circumstances and or drama, problems that they can't fix, or they don't know what to do.
Mm.
So they come with the drama, whether they're doing well in life, essentially, or they're not able to get to doing well in life. They're in their way everywhere they go. They come along and go, my life is not good in this area and or at all. And they got a circumstance, they're saying, this is in my way. I'm pissed off with that circumstance. I don't know what to do. I don't know how to deal with it. There might be somebody who's in my way. There's obstacles.
Mm.
They think the obstacle is the problem. And they're looking to remove the obstacles. So they'll come to me and we'll sit down and they have a look at it. What ends up happening is we essentially connect to they're the obstacle.
Yeah.
Because of the way they're thinking, believing, approaching, behaving. And they got to change some stuff. So the transition first is recognizing, my God, I'm in the way. There might be circumstances that need to be dealt with, but until I change, the circumstances are going to keep reappearing in different formats. So Could you help me, please?
Mm.
It's always essentially getting to, no matter what they come with, is to what do you want to cause, and are you utilizing, in touch with your full potential, which is where the joy and happiness and the pleasure of being human exists.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting, almost double-edged sword, and there's fantastic author Robert Scheinfeld who wrote a book, Busting Free from the Money Game, which is not really about money at all, but he talks about the fact that you might have adults who are people in their 30s, 40s, 50s, and so on, who still very much are in this almost childlike belief that life is happening to me.
Yes.
Yeah, and then stepping into this space of being an adult is understanding that life isn't happening to me, life is happening for me, and the life that I'm experiencing is a direct reflection of the beliefs that I hold about myself. So therefore, if I'm experiencing a life which is not my preferred reality, I need to understand that in fact that's my responsibility.
Yeah.
I always have choice. And that's it. I run my little CEO groups, as you know, and it is interesting. There are people who are in CEO roles who outwardly would appear highly successful and very intelligent and qualified and so on, but still very much stuck in this, these things are happening to me and it's not my fault. Yeah. And so once you start to drink that Kool-Aid, a little bit like, Morpheus saying to Neo, Keanu, do you want the blue pill or the red pill? He says, give me the red pill. Well, in this context, the red pill is like, it's all you, dude. It's if you want to see change, you have to be the change.
Yeah. To add to that, in what can appear to be more esoteric, but essentially it's true, is if the external world is a reflection of you, if your external world is a reflection, then you're causing it.
Yeah.
So if you look at the outside and go, this is in the way, that's in the way, then who you're bringing to it is encouraging and in growing it and evolving it in that shape. So when someone gets to a level of success and meets still a level of dissatisfaction, they're looking for something more. Usually the missing piece is who they become in their model of the world, their structure, their beliefs, their sense of self. And so the first go-to is what I have to do is extend, evolve, increase my external world, my circumstances. So that's moving furniture around. So sitting with someone in a room who's in the billionaire class or the multi-million dollar, because we use dollars as a measure of success now in our cultures. If that's the world, and I've got to increase that because the couch is boring now, or I've got to get a bigger house now, I'm still not getting the feeling of peace, satisfaction, safety, and achievement, and a sense of recognition in myself, no matter what I accumulate, then there's a point where you got to go, what if you're looking in the wrong place?
Yeah.
Or that feeling.
Yeah,
so buy another couch. Yeah.
Yeah. I think about, in my role, yeah, I had one specific example. I met with the CFO for a coffee recently. And I said, oh, tell me about, your work. He said, oh, look, I've got this great job. I really, really like the boss. I get to work 4 days a week. And on the fifth day, I get to play golf. And, I'm very secure in my role. But I think I need a new job. So why? He says, well, because I'm on 425 and I want to be on $500,000. You say, dude, have you thought about, well, maybe you're going to get the next level of satisfaction from things other than, what's your salary? Because as a good friend of mine used to say, people, they climb the ladder only to realize it's leaning you against the wrong building.
Yes.
Yeah. And so there's nothing wrong with wanting, to take on greater responsibility or earn more money and so on, but at what cost?
And what's in the next 100,000 that isn't there in the 400? So what's there in the 500 that's not there in the 400? And what's there, so as you look at that, I love that, what you're saying, is the journey in my work, the journey is to recognize that, okay, let's cause more money. Let's cause a bigger operation. Let's expand your life. But let's just make sure that what I call the ecologies or the structure of that is with the right reasons. Otherwise, your ladder's against the wrong building.
Mm.
And you can have more and go higher and higher and higher. But as you get to the top, you get there and say, oh, this is not it.
Mm.
And you can spend a lot of years climbing that ladder and go, this is not it.
Yeah.
There's something missing. So for me, it's because the human mind is so creative and its imaginative ability is extraordinary, infinitely capable. We can imagine anything. We can do a set of or body of work or a process to explore that before you spend the next 10 years building it, climbing the ladder, and go, well, because we can simulate in our imagination, we can go out there and have a look and see what's actually happening here, and already recognize through the imagination's capability that it's not going to have what you want there, because what you thought you wanted isn't what you wanted.
Mm.
But if it is, then it's aligned.
Mm-hmm.
If it's not, why don't we move the ladder to another building or build an igloo or some incredible structure that gives you everything you need? But it might cost a lot less and it might take a lot less effort.
But it will require change, and change is scary.
Yes, it requires that, and it requires inquiry. But the inquiry is into what is really motivating you. So if I'm a little kid growing up in the history of these people that are coming to me, and we look back and go, well, growing up, they sort of had this appalling lack, and or something was missing, or there was no love, or I couldn't get dad's recognition, or he was never, all the stories. And then the decision inside the young kid is, I will never, ever, ever suffer that again. So they built these structures that they'll never suffer that again. But it's to get away from pain. Once they get to a certain point of achievement, the pain's gone of that. In other words, the circumstance that they suffered as a kid is gone, but they're still building structures to protect themselves, but they're not seeing it's gone.
Or they're, in fact, creating situations to perpetuate holding on to that belief, which may not therefore be in a work context, but it might be in their private life or their own relationship with their children or their health or whatever it might be.
Yeah. And when it's redesigned through inquiry and process in this work, we can line all that up and get it clear so that the answer is, what do you really want to experience and cause and be inside that experience, and get very clean with it and very clear. Then start building that. And of course, the thing that comes then is joy, a sense of peace, safety, happiness, completion, a sense of I'm okay being me, or worthiness, that a lot of people are running for by accumulating external circumstances, looking for joy, happiness, peace, sense of self, achievement. But it's a relentless journey in the commercial having world to look for those pleasures, because once you've bought the thing or expanded your cash flow to the point where you go, well, I've sorted it now, you once again meet, I was elated having the win. I was elated getting the reward. I was elated buying the Porsche. I was elated buying the beach house, flying business class, first class, and then go, I've still got the feelings missing. And the feeling is to explore who you're bringing to the equation and your experience of who you are. So for me, that's the greatest joy. And what I do know is that everybody has that ingredient capability with their unique set of gifts, and then applying what they really want, aligned with who they really are. Suddenly there's a marriage in heaven, and they start to cause a life that is just breathtaking and beautiful.
Yeah. And, it's certainly watching current affairs at the moment. And I mean, this is not just limited to, the guy or girl who owns a small business in Brisbane, or, I mean, just as an example, you look at somebody like Elon Musk, and you go, Elon Musk is the richest man in the world. His cause is to take people to live on Mars. why on earth is he getting involved in these, online arguments with Donald Trump?
Interesting question.
Yeah, and obviously there's some unrealized things because I would assume that not that I would ever want to have that much money. How much can you spend? But it's if I'm so rich and so in control of my destiny, why would I even bother with this crap? It's like it's inventing struggle and inventing disharmony for entertainment in some part of how he's operating. It must be entertaining to him. Otherwise, why would he do it?
Yeah, great question. And, I mean, listening with enormous joy of him and understanding not everybody finds Elon a pleasure, looking at him in some of the interviews, he does get intimate enough to talk about the fact that he has trouble sleeping. So he's up working or he's in working on projects and so on, which you could look at and go, well, Elon, if I was talking to him, it's awesome what you're creating. Thank you so much for what you bring to the betterment of mankind and womankind. But you're not sleeping. Is that aligned with you're so joy-filled and so inspired, or because you're also so restless and something's not right that you are out of balance? What's happening here? And then you could explore that and say, well, Elon, you've become the richest man in the world. Are you peaceful? Well, when I watch him getting caught up in arguments with Donald, and Donald's also got a lot of argument in him.
Sure.
You look at it and, well, what's going on, boys? Are we dick measuring? What are we doing? What's really going on? And so in that sense, I would be asking, are they joy-filled? Are they happy? Are they still? Are they peaceful? Or are they relentlessly building empires to compensate for something that might be able to be dealt with a lot less effort, or not?
Yeah.
They both might go, and I imagine because the egos are big, they say, no, we're perfectly happy and joy-filled. So, okay. Or, yeah, there is an itch there if I was vulnerable enough, and I can't sleep and it's awful. And I did see Elon get emotional in an interview once, saying when someone had suggested, I want to be Elon Musk, he said, no, you don't. I can't sleep. It's restless. My brain never stops.
Yeah, I thought, without talking too much about him.
Yeah.
But I mean, it's obvious. It's certainly obvious to people who have had some experience and exposure and, high level thinking, which obviously, the work that I've been doing and the work that you do and so on, it's pretty easy from the outside to see when somebody's in a state of dysfunction.
Yeah.
But it's often very hard when you're in that state to realize it for yourself, or maybe you do realize, but you don't know what to do about it. And that's where utilizing as somebody as skilled as you can be extraordinarily helpful. And I think one of the things, Rex, that, I really admire about you is that you've been doing this for a long time, and yet you're constantly learning and developing, a broader suite of skills. And, in the last few years that we've been working together, it's been breath, and then it's been ice bars. And now, most recently talking about, the hermetic principles, the Kybalion, and so, talk about how you've gone about sharpening your own saw, to use that metaphor, to keep what you're doing relevant and impactful, and how you're now tying those things into the work that you're doing.
Yeah, thank you. I like to try something on before I bring it to my clientele. So I like to practice it. So a lot of the technologies and or skills that I practice, I will first immerse after becoming curious.
Right.
So yeah, the hermetic principles, the 7 laws of the universe, the breath work, the ice baths all came to me in moments where a little window opened. So I'll share some of those, right? So an example might be a number of years ago, 10, 12 years ago, I love running. mountains, hills. And I've got my favorite hill locally where I live is Mount Coolum. And one day, and I pride myself on being strong and sort of getting older and defying, the idea that age is a declining experience, and playing with that youthfulness. So I'm sort of interested in youthfulness, youthful thinking, youthful practices, youthful approach to life, that we are youthful. And I don't think age and youth, I think being human is just a youthful experience if you apply it the right way. So I was running down Mount Coolum one day, literally, and running hard and feeling very good about myself. And I could hear these breaths, and you could sort of hear people coming up behind me. I thought, no one can come past me. But so my ego kicked in, and we got to the bottom, and these young boys came flying past me. They were young teenage lads, so strong, so infinitely in touch with their physical ability. And we got to the bottom and we were laughing, and they were sort of saying, that's pretty good going, old man, and all of that. So I was saying, get stuffed. But essentially I said, what the hell are you guys doing? Because that was fast. And they said, oh, we do this Wim Hof stuff. And I said, what's Wim Hof? And I sort of just explored the Iceman and thought, I got to know. So I went home and jumped on Google and started looking around and suddenly found him, and then started doing his courses. And then, here we are 10, 12 years later, where breathwork is an integral part of my life. And then followed it to Stanislav Grof's work, to what happened in the 70s, from studying hallucinogenics and transforming the mind and exploring human potential and magic. And so there was that world. And then getting to a certain point of it where I go, I've just got to share this with you, my client, or my group I'm working with. And I will start to bring it in, but I need to develop enough skill level to know that I'm doing it congruently. So I spend a bit of time practicing and experiencing it. I tend to go on my own experience more than other people's theory. I'll read other people's theory, then go and play until I connect with it. And the second example was, I'll use one. Well, ice baths came with Wim, and then the breath work came with Wim, and then exploration from that to the Tumo breathing, which was the Tibetan monks, and understanding breath and pranayamic breath and the history of breath. And I noticed it came through all the spiritual pathways. And I thought, this is really sacred ground. So it led to another area, which I won't mention now, other than the realm of transmutation. And when I looked at transmutation, I was talking to a common friend of your and mine, Elle, and we got talking about breath, and we got talking about stuff, and we got talking about the hermetic wisdoms, the Egyptian wisdoms, and started to look at that, and the word transmutation came up. And of course, I suddenly found myself diving in, and every night, late at night, you'll find my light on, and I can't help but I'm reading and immersing and studying what's going on in that realm. So I find that will find its way into my mentoring.
Mm-hmm.
So I love learning and I love experiencing, but I love more taking wisdoms that I learn are immutably wise and time proven, thousands of years, and then bringing them through into the methodologies of helping people connect with their full potential. Breathwork's amazing for transforming people who are struggling with trauma, struggling with self-worth issues, struggling with addictions. Really helpful, as is ice baths. And I know the hermetic principles come back because I'm very interested in the moment and what's happening on the planet with human culture, and noticing that we have sort of strayed from really beautiful foundational principles of humanness. And I'm noticing there's very few statesmen. I say that non-gender specifically. And that we're looking for those statesmen, and we're statesmen when it comes where the wisdom is. And that wisdom applied, walked, talked, is you see it, you recognize that it's not just a theoretician or someone that's getting up giving a speech. So for me, the link to all those wisdoms are where I found they worked for me.
Mm.
And then I start to, with my really close clients that I know really well, and I can play and just practice with them as an open forum. And then I start to bring it into my modus operandi. And that's just gone on for 30 plus years of bringing wisdoms and bringing neurolinguistics and bringing metaphysics and bringing the study of psychology and just keep bringing it in. So it's become this wonderful, eclectic realm of joy where I sit with people in a mentoring context and just love the sharing and the experience and helping people have something to try that might help them shift something that they've had for years they can't get rid of.
Yeah, and going back to the comment you made about a lack of statesmen or statespeople, I suppose you'd say now.
Yeah.
Do you think that that's a new phenomenon, or is that something that's been happening for some time?
Please, and I say this with a caveat, I don't know much. I'm learning all the time. And what I've understood is if you go back pre the Second World War and through those eras to the First World War and into those cultures, I know they weren't perfect. When we came through the Second World War, we came into the realm of consumerism, mass production. Earlier on, we went through Taylorism, we went through assembly lines. We started to get into making money. Everybody can have anything. And I think we disappeared in the recent past through all of that into a realm of having and being rich in money is a all-pervading problem solver.
Mm-hmm.
And I can be the rich and famous. So there's this interplay with movie stars, rock stars, and reality. And I think it's gotten blurry. And a lot of people disappeared into success as that. And I can be that. And I can be a superstar. I can be this. I can be that. I can be rich. I can have anything. So I think the realm of entitlement became all about me having more so that I can, well, then I'm happy. Then I'm joy-filled. I think we've gone through an era of making money is more important than the ecology of the balance of the integrity of nature's laws.
Yeah, and it's interesting. I read a statistic recently. I can't remember what exactly the statistic was, but it was a survey that they did in the US of 20-something-year-olds, so I think 20 to 30-year-olds. And when they did this survey, I think 5 years ago, the number one profession of 20 to 30-year-olds in America, they write, what is your occupation? They work in hospitality, right? Whereas in the past, they probably worked in agriculture, and then they worked in factories, and then it was, I work in hospitality. And now this latest survey, and I have to find the exact thing, it's what's the number one occupation of 20-something-year-olds in America? What do you reckon it is?
I can't help thinking IT. But,
social influencer.
Serious?
Yeah. So, and a lot of that social influencing stuff is very fake. Here's a picture of me, getting on a jet or driving a Bentley, but it's not my jet and it's not my Bentley. And, so many of these influencers are now being brought out into the open. I don't know if you saw that special about that guy, the Liver King, who.
Oh, I did come across him. He looked like a big bear.
Yeah, and he was like, I just eat liver, and they're saying, no way, dude, you do steroids. He's like, I don't do steroids. Now, of course, it's all come out that he's a massive steroid user. And anyway, I mean, with this what do they call it? The type of threat. Oh, I've got a mental blank is the word. But, with AI and what's happening with AI in terms of how it's going to impact the workforce and how a huge percentage of existing jobs will no longer be relevant, and therefore having people need to go on to universal basic income. If nobody or the vast percentage of people don't have a job and everybody is on universal basic income, then that's going to completely and utterly change the paradigm, isn't it? Because you're not going to then be able to say, my worth is dependent on how much I earn, because for most people, you'll be on the dole.
Yeah.
So
that's a heck of a rabbit hole, isn't it?
Oh, for sure.
So maybe there's a huge, and I notice this differently because of my work as opposed to your work. is the way of identifying ourselves, e.g. the influencer, is really, really important to our culture. So the presentation of myself, whether it's really me or not, is incredibly important. I must be portrayed as this. So yeah, all of posting, all of that is of these images of perfect, what appears to be perfect. Trendy, what the rock stars are wearing, the tattoos, the whole, not judging any of it, just saying the imagery, the presentation is more important than who I really am. And the exploration about who I really am, I believe, is an ache in our culture. So I think we're going to find ourselves, as is always evolution, coming back to essential, basic exploration, where the essential truth has always been staring us in the face, is no matter what you pretend, no matter what you accumulate, no matter what, you will always come back to looking in the mirror and saying, how you going, dude?
Yeah.
And, when we come back to the mirror, we have an opportunity to influence and change at the cause. Then we can start to build an integrity that is going to build something really worth having. Meanwhile, we go wandering as humans down all sorts of rabbit holes, hiding, exploring, protecting ourselves from pain, or pretending, and I'm my job title, I'm my money, I'm my car, I'm my beach house, I'm this, I'm that. I'm looking, like when we've traveled overseas in the last couple of years, which is a lot, I cannot believe how much I'm watching people, especially young girls, just in a restaurant, in a beautiful setting somewhere, they're just filming themselves and filming each other. They're not even paying attention to the space around them, the beauty of it, or what's happening aesthetically. They're so narcissistically immersed. And in that, of course, I believe, in my optimistic, cynicism, is that I believe it's all a journey to find our way to where the essential self is, so we can come into the truth and let go, trying so damn hard to be something that isn't who we are, and get it right and become who we are, and then cause worlds and experiences and help each other in the true nature of humanness.
Yeah.
To be successful as a human, whether you've got a lot of money, no money, a fancy car, the latest caravan, I don't care. Shoes, the latest thongs, the funkiest this, the funkiest that, being seen at the best place, for brief moments, sending photographs. Like, there I am, there I am, there I am.
Well, yeah. I've, as you know, up until recently, I was a very proud member of one of Brisbane's premier business clubs. And I joined their membership committee, and the younger members were saying, look, the reason that you can't attract young members is because there's no Instagram, decor, so they want to join clubs where it's about the decor and the location and the chandelier and the, completely losing sight of the reason to be in these clubs is for the community, So I can completely relate to what you're saying. And I suppose, just to close this out, because I know you've got things to do, at the end of the day, everybody's doing the best they can. If they could do better, they would, and I was actually in a webinar last night, and this guy was talking about, what the reality is, that there's always somebody who can help you. And at the end of the day, it's not your fault.
Yes.
So it's easy to get into a situation and go, oh God, if it's all me, then therefore there must be something wrong with me. There's nothing wrong. There's just opportunities to grow and opportunities to embrace a new, better version. But of course, you've got to have the courage to want to, look yourself in the mirror and what's that AA term? Have a complete moral inventory.
Yes. And it's quite a thing to meet that. And I think people need to be ready for it. But if I thought, while you were talking, I was just thinking of this as we close, this metaphor that came to my mind. Hopefully it's relevant. If not, it's amusing. And if it's not bad, it's a complete waste of a moment. Is that a little, when you go to a supermarket or a shopping space and there's this kid screaming and yelling and you can clearly see they're lost.
Yep.
And you walk up to them and say, hey, hi. And they look at you and say, are you lost? And they're sort of sobbing, yes, yes, yes. And where's mummy or daddy? I don't know. And so they're in that terrible lost moment. And I see people like that. And then somewhere in that supermarket, somewhere in that shopping center, is mummy, is home, is daddy, is whoever that's significant and safe. And we help them find their way to that person, that dynamic.
Yeah.
And so I think in life, we all get lost in the supermarket. I think each of us has probably had that experience, both as a parent, if we're parents, and or as the child, lost somewhere and standing on the steps of school and no one's come to pick us up, and on and on and on. And my job is to go and say, hey, talk to me. What's going on? What are you feeling? What do you actually want? Okay, let's go find them. And when they find them, we can go, okay, that wasn't a fun experience. How can we do that differently?
Well, it's a great metaphor, and I certainly have experience being on both sides of that coin. Rex, one of the great things about working with you is that you can work both with people in the room, but a lot of the work that you do is online now.
Yes.
And we were just working out the other day that this podcast now goes out to a weekly audience of 107,500 people. So a lot of the people who... Oh, well, I'm excited to return to more frequently podcasting now because I got a bit too busy for a while. I had to just, tremendous gratitude from my side as to how much you've helped me, and also, having referred you literally dozens of senior business people over the years, the feedback and the just seeing people's lives transform is extraordinary, and must feel wonderful to feel that you've played a part in that. And certainly for anybody listening, I'm a huge advocate of what you do, and I can't recommend you more highly. So thank you, Rex. It would be wonderful to get you back, and perhaps, do deeper dives on some of these things.
That would be wonderful.
Yeah, rather than trying to sort of knock it all off in 50 minutes or so. But Rex, enjoy your afternoon, and I look forward to seeing you soon.
And in reciprocation, I wish you a great experience looking for a day as George Clooney and or giving birth to babies. I'd like to be there when you do the birth baby thing, just to sort of be, or probably in the next room looking through a window, but let me know when you do that. And on that note, it's been an amazing 36 years. We've never had an argument.
Oh, I don't know if that's true, but
I can't remember you arguing.
I'm a pretty argumentative fellow, so I find that hard to believe. But anyway, okay, Rex, have a good one.
Blessings. Thank you for having me on. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you for listening to the Arete Podcast with Richard Triggs. We frequently feature guests from organisations we are currently recruiting to build the company brand as an attraction strategy for candidates. If you would like to promote your organisation's brand as an employer of choice, please contact Richard directly on 0403 588 517 or via email richardt@areteexecutive.com.au.